Right.
Fantastic. So, Evelyn, thank you so much for dialing in from Nairobi on this International Women's Day. For those of you who don't know Evelyn, she is last year's Positive Role Model winner in East Africa. So she does a lot of work. I told you we're not going to introduce our speakers. I'm going to hand you over to Evelyn. She'll give you a background on who she is, but really appreciate you making time to be with us, Evelyn.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Do I go ahead and start?
Yep, you start. All sorted.
Let me share my screen.
Fantastic. All good to go.
All right. And if I scroll down, you can see.
Yeah, we can do.
As I scroll down, right?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. All right. Happy International Women's Day to everyone, to all the ladies in the room, and to all the gentlemen who are our allies. Sorry, we appreciate you. A very warm welcome. My name is Evelyn, and I'll be talking about myself, a little bit about myself, but also a little bit about women in tech, the area that I am in. It was so inspiring to hear Andrea's talk on menstrual health and all she has been through in terms of her courage, her resilience, and her purpose, finding her purpose in all that. Sometimes, in the world, your test becomes your testimony. And so her tests, her challenges around menstrual health and the health challenges became her area of purpose, where she's giving back to the community in terms of menstrual health. So mine is a journey of, interestingly enough, mental health, but I will talk about women in tech. So I represent Tekawat. Tekawat is a company that is centered around emerging technologies. That's your AI, your Internet of Things, etc. But we focus on the strategic aspect of that. And we provide thought leadership, corporate training, advisory, and speaking engagements around that. We are also an advocate of the European Technology Chamber, which is a chamber of commerce that is based in Germany, based out of Germany, and is co-funded by the European Union, which is really around how do we get tech and European businesses to thrive in the area of technology, but also businesses around the world and humanity in general. So in that chamber, I sit in the Women in Tech Alliance. So they have different alliances. They have Smart Cities Alliance. They have Smart Manufacturing Alliance. So I sit in the Women in Tech Alliance, and I chair the board of the Women in Tech Alliance as well. So that's a little bit about me. Also, if I could share a little bit about myself, my career has been around 20 years of experience in various areas, multifaceted. So I started out in the oil and gas industry, in supply and trading. So we would import crude oil and finished refined oil, sorry. And then I went into corporate banking, corporate and investment banking, working for Stanbic Bank, part of the Standard Bank Group. And then I went into where we were, financing infrastructure projects, financing power projects. And then I went into financing manufacturing companies and real estate. That was the end of my corporate life, and I went into tech and founded my own company, which is known as Tekawat, where I sit now as a corporate trainer, a strategy advisor, a speaker on emerging technologies. I'm also an advocate and mentor of women in tech. I've spoken about. I'm a keynote speaker as well, panel speaker, an author, a commentator. And I also serve as the president of the Rotary Club of Ngong Road, where we champion mental health and leadership development. So I'll speak about the mental health a little bit later. And this work that I do has earned me some accolades, which I'm really, truly grateful for the industry for being able to recognize the efforts that I have made in this industry. Some of them are listed there as 100 most influential African leaders in tech, 50 most influential CEOs in Kenya, inspiring 50 in Africa and United Kingdom, and of course, Gender Mainstreaming Awards, which is a big thank you to you, Colleen, for that award, and the team and the judges that were part of that. In 2023, I was awarded the Positive Role Model for East Africa. And that has been a very affirming part of my journey that tells me I'm in the right place. So my career before I began as a woman in tech, as explained, I started out in the oil industry. This was I started out as an intern in Ola Energy, but then back then it was part of ExxonMobil. So I explained about how I was in the supply and trading. Then I went into Gulf Energy, and my career pivoted from supply and trading. I went into treasury management. I also did work with Gulf Energy in South Africa for a short period, about 2 years, also doing the same finance and as well as supply and trading in that area. And then I pivoted from treasury. I went into banking, looking at being a relationship manager in the different sectors. I started out with the power and infrastructure sector. I went into manufacturing and then real estate. And then COVID hit. And what happened is in 2020, now my career has been very interesting. After every 2 years, almost every 2 years, I would get bored of the role and I'd look for the next thing. So the pivots that you've seen to treasury, to relationship management were periods of reflection where I said, okay, I'm feeling bored. There must be more to life about this. What is there? What more can I do? And so I remember when I was at Stanbic and in 2020, COVID hit. And suddenly we were, working from home because there were all these restrictions. And suddenly I had so much time in my hands, so much free time. There's no commute time. Weekends, you really can't go anywhere, so you're home. And so I remember at that point, I was so frustrated. I'd experienced quite some challenges at the bank with a boss who I would say was a bully, And for me, I think I was ready to leave. But then I stayed on and things changed anyway. But it reached a point where I was looking for meaning. Like I'd worked for years, but I said there must be more to life than just waking up, getting a paycheck, because I would dread every Monday morning. I'm like, oh my goodness, do I have to be here again? Not that it was bad, but I think for me, I'd reached the end of my limit of just working, and I was looking for more purposeful, more meaningful work. And so when we were working from home, I engaged a coach who also happened to be my pastor at the time. And I remember telling her, I'm so frustrated. I feel like, I don't have any meaning. I just feel stuck, And what I wanted to do, or the purpose of the coaching was, I want to find out what my purpose is, the reason why I was created, the reason why I was put on this earth. And the reason why I actually wanted a pastor or someone who was of the same spiritual inclination as myself was, I believe, the creator, God, our creator, who created us, is the one who knows why we were actually created and put on this earth and what we were created to do. And so I wanted to find out from the creator himself, what was my purpose on this earth? And so it began a journey of I remember one time as we're having the coaching session, and she told me, when you speak about your job, you just sound, but when you speak about tech, because I started to get this interest around tech, when you start talking about tech, your face lights up, And so she just began to draw on that potential, because that's what coaches do. They draw upon the potential, draw out that potential. And so as she began to do that, I'm like, wait a minute, you mean this could be something that I could actually pursue? So what we agreed on was that I would go and put myself out there. I was not always someone that liked to put myself out there. I was always the one that was timid and, feeling like, what do I have to contribute, or people will not take me seriously. So I was not the first to put up my hand to speak, and such things. But she held me accountable to my actions in terms of contributing to the society. So putting myself out there in terms of putting out articles around what I was researching on, what I was interested in the area of emerging technologies, and just putting it out there. I know I was new to the field, but I had some accountability there. And kicking and screaming, I said, okay, I'm going to do this. So I actually put out my first, LinkedIn article. I don't remember what it was, but it was around, emerging technologies. So I did my research, my thorough research, and I put it out there. And I remember the reception was so good, maybe because I never actually ever posted on LinkedIn, funny enough. So the reception was good. People were engaging and all that. So I said, you mean they actually liked it? I'm such a newbie in tech, but I sound like I've been here for years, And so I encouraged myself. And I remember I was doing, I think, a 7-part series. And so when I finished the series, my sister, who's also a publisher, said, hey, wait a minute, you have so much content. You could actually write a book on emerging technologies. And so she helped me with that journey, and I put out the book. And, it just went on from there. It's like it just spiraled from there. I would get invited for speaking engagements. I would have media interviews, and all these things. And then the awards began to come. And this is a span of less than a year. So this was in March 2020 when COVID hit. And now we are in somewhere around August. And, the invitations have started to come. And I'm feeling so conflicted because I'm working for the bank. And if there's any of you that works for the bank, of course, you know about speaking to the media and outside business interests and all this. So I was really conflicted. But they came at this, like right about the time when the call came for me to leave employment and go branch out into emerging technologies. And I remember I had really prayed about this story, and I said, I don't want to leave before my time. I want to leave when it's God's timing. And so I really prayed about this. I had prepared myself financially, I prepared myself, but I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. But the conviction was much more than the faith that I had was much more than the fear. And so, in as much as I was fearful, how is it going to be, and all that, I had the courage, and especially because I had an accountability partner, then I could do it. So then I branched out into emerging technologies, and the story has just been phenomenal. So that's a bit about my career journey. But what led me to that point in terms of my own personal growth journey? So when I was growing up, I had a father who was very harsh, very, very strict and very harsh. If you did not comply, there are consequences. You almost, and I know he did not know any better, so I'm not really blaming. Sometimes as parents, we don't know any better. Hard people. So we don't know any better. But so very harsh. And so my coping mechanism became complying with everything to the T, being the best student. So I buried myself. I think I became so introverted, buried in books. My grades were really good in school because obviously I was so internally focused, trying not to do the wrong thing, or be found doing the wrong thing. What I didn't realize is that that was a traumatic experience that had very profound effects upon my life later on. So what that happens is, fast forward to, I can't remember if it was 2020, the time that I was branching out into entrepreneurship and I was trying to find meaning and purpose. I remember one of the things that I encountered is therapy. you know, someone, I think it was a presentation that was being done, and I said, and at the end of the presentation, they're presenting about attachment styles. And at the end of it, I was so intrigued, and you know, they had their contacts, and it was a therapist who was presenting, and I reached out. I'm like, wait a minute, I think I could be having those attachment issues, you know, that she talked about. So attachment style is like you could have, so there are different attachment styles based on how you are raised, or how you are, you know, every child is brought into a family with a father and a mother. So depending on how your parents treated you, how they emotionally nurtured you, you could either become securely attached or insecurely attached. And they're different. So if you're either securely attached, but if you're insecurely attached, you could be either fearful avoidant, you could be a dismissive avoidant, or you could be an anxiously attached person. And so one of the things that, you know, so that intrigued me because I could see the patterns, you know, when they tell you why someone would be a fearful avoidant and all that and all that. So I then started to pursue, and I actually reached out to the therapist, and I said, you know, reached out for, and there's no stigma. Sometimes there's so much stigma around mental health that even when we are facing challenges, we feel like, you know, no, I don't have problems, you know, or be perceived as someone who's unstable or all this. But we have all gone through mental health challenges in one way or another, through life, through our upbringing, and there's no stigma around it. So anyway, so I reached out to the therapist, and I think for me, the light bulb moment came when I explained to her my problems. I started to tell her, I feel like I'm always so fearful of authority, fearful to speak up, you know, not wanting to take up opportunities, you know, the things that just show up out of traumatic experiences. And she told me, I mean, you know, after all that, she said, she actually now gave me the light bulb moment of what the issue was. And it was around narcissistic abuse. And we have experienced this in our workplaces, in whichever areas, in our friendships, in our marriages, but we never really know. I think sometimes we throw around that word of narcissism without really understanding what is it. So for me, it was a story of narcissistic abuse, which came from the childhood experiences that now translated into the workplace, where I don't see myself as good enough, where I'm not able to set boundaries, where people take advantage of you, exploit you, and you encounter bullies in the workplace, you encounter bullies everywhere, people who want to control and manipulate you, and they actually do succeed in doing that. And when she explained and she hit the nail on the head and she said narcissistic abuse, I'm like, wait a minute, you know? And suddenly I could see the patterns. I could see the relationships that I would seek out, whether romantic relationships, whether personal, you know, friendships, they were all narcissistic. They were all bullies, they were all controlling and manipulative people. And I didn't realize this pattern is because it was what was familiar from my upbringing, and that now was manifesting across my adulthood. And so, you know, the programming that tells you, I'm not good enough, so I sort of put my needs at the back so that everybody's needs. So you're always almost like sacrificing yourself for others, you know, which is not a healthy pattern. But what you don't realize is that the narcissist, if I can use that, and the other people who are like codependent, because there's a term for the ones like me, who, you know, who are affected by that, it's like a match made in hell, because the abuser and the victim are like almost attract each other in a way that is like a match made in hell. And so I never realized that pattern until that point. And suddenly I realized all my friends were narcissistic. The relationships that I was in, no wonder I had a bully in the workplace. No wonder, you know, they were so attracted to me and all that, you know, it's because I put my needs so down there and everybody's needs first. And so that began my journey of self-awareness, my journey of reprogramming. And I remember after my therapist sessions, I went and joined the personal development school. So this is an online school, so you can always find it. The founder is called Thais Gibson. I think she's based in Canada. And so she taught about, it's online anyway, so there are video sessions and you can always log in. And so, you know, taught about different ways of reprogramming your mind, you know, how to set boundaries, you know, how to just being self-aware and the things that trip you up. Sometimes when you've been abused like that, you tend to put your needs last, but you also put your qualities last. You actually you almost reject yourself. You reject your personality because it's what made you get the beatings, what made you get, you know, all these traumatic experiences. And so you put them at the back. So even the qualities that you had, you actually reject them, and yet they're your strengths. So once I discovered that and started doing the inner work, the inner healing work, the self-awareness work, I began to see these patterns. And suddenly I started to say no and to set boundaries and, you know, to just do away with these traumatic experiences. I mean, and you can imagine that's long after my own father had passed away. And so these patterns are still perpetuating even when he's long gone. It's because there's a program. There's a program that is running on autopilot in your subconscious mind. So when you think about those traumatic experiences that made you feel you're not good enough, are the same program that is running 40 years later is still telling you subconsciously, you're not even aware that this is happening, but subconsciously still telling you you're not good enough. So what happens is that you know, your mind affects your emotions, it affects how you feel, it affects your decisions. So if you continue to feel I'm not good enough, I'm not appreciated, I'm not valued, my, you know, my whatever doesn't matter, it affects how you feel. You constantly feel inadequate, you constantly feel emotions of being inferior, and it affects the opportunities that you take up. So you wonder why you're being passed over for promotion, but it's because your decision is telling you I'm not good enough. So if you constantly feel like you're not good enough, other people will also see that you're not good enough, you know. And in my personal development journey, I learned about the 7 areas of life. And that's the spiritual area, the physical, the mental, emotional, social, financial, and professional. And how you need to balance all those areas. And one area can affect the other, or affect them all. And you know that made me start realizing and journaling every day and just seeing where did my emotions, how are they today, how was I, you know, just being present. When we talk about mindfulness, is being aware of your emotions as and when they are happening, so that then you can correct something as it is happening. So I began to journal every day and checking, okay, my interaction, what made me angry today? It was an interaction with so and so. Why was I angry? You know, I felt they were disrespecting me. Why did I feel they were disrespecting me? Because they violated my boundaries. Or I felt disrespected because maybe they said something that was maybe, I don't know, not appealing to me, or whatever the reason could be. But I started to journal. And over time, as you continue to bring these things from your auto program to your conscious mind, then you can actually now begin to make changes for the better. And the other thing that I learned is about 6 basic human needs. So this is by Tony Robbins. And he says all human beings have 6 basic human needs: love and connection, growth. Growth could mean, you know, personal growth, professional growth, spiritual growth, or whatever it is. Certainty, which means, you know, you want your life to go in such a way, setting boundaries so that, you know, you have a certain lifestyle. Uncertainty means, you know, variety, wanting new experiences, traveling and all that. Contribution means how are you contributing to the society, impacting the society. And for me, that is such a big driver for my life, because I like to contribute and leave impacting other people through my teaching, through my training. Everything that I have learned, the lessons that I have learned, I like to impact others through them. The last one is on significance. This is having meaning, you know, that your life has meaning, that you're valued, that you're heard and you're seen. And we all have varying degrees of what is our number one basic human need and what is our last. So I know for me, significance is number one. I don't know what it is for you, but I will challenge you to explore it. Check out the personal development school, check out your attachment style so that you can also, if there are any things we want to be securely attached as we interact in the workplace, as we interact with our families. And what you realize, a lot of us may be parents on this call, So if you're hurt or if you have insecure attachment, you will pass it on to your children. So the last thing you want is to do that. You want your children to be healthy and securely attached. So I challenge you to actually check this out. Find out what your attachment style is so that you can do better for your children, for the next generation, and even for yourself. What you realize is when you have such mental health challenges, they impact your creativity. I never realized that until when I did the inner work. Suddenly, I would take up opportunities. Actually, they would come. It's so funny that they would actually now come. It's almost as if they know that. But I guess you're showing up differently. You're showing up at work differently. People view you differently because you suddenly you sound more confident. You are more confident because you have more knowledge. You've dealt with the inner traumatic experiences. You've reprogrammed your subconscious mind, and you're showing up differently. So the opportunities come. And my personal growth journey has also been about leadership and taking up opportunities for leadership, for strategy development. And even when I put my hand up to serve as the president of the Rotary Club, I never saw myself doing this before this therapy work that I did. Before this programming, I never saw myself as a leader. I always wanted to be a follower or someone that hides behind the scenes that is not seen. But now after doing the work, I'm like, hey, I have so much value to contribute to the world that I need to use my strengths to do that. And I remember when as I branched out into the tech space, and almost, I think it was like a year or less than a year actually after I branched into the tech space, and the European Technology Chamber reached out and they said to me, I think I'd done a speaking engagement, and they said, we actually want you to come and join our board of the Women in Tech Alliance. And you can imagine how the imposter syndrome checks in at that point. You can imagine, and I'm telling you how it checked in for me. And I was excited, but then the doubts checked in. And I remember asking this lady who had reached out, are you sure? Okay, I didn't ask her, are you sure it's me? But I must have told her something. But in my mind, what I was asking is, are you sure it is me you're looking for? This is a global opportunity. This is a European thing. Me as a Black African woman, what am I doing there? And so that was imposter syndrome. But she was very, she really, there was like, you're the one we need, the skills and all that. And the imposter syndrome, even after, I accepted the position. And while I was there, sometimes I would struggle with, maybe they're going to find out that I'm a fraud. It's just a matter of time. I'm looking at the clock and wondering, okay, when are they going to come and discover, oh my goodness, I'm not who they were looking for, But that time never came. As a matter of fact, a year later, they came and said, no, now we actually want you to chair the Women in Tech Alliance. But by the time they asked me to chair, I think I had already gone through all this, inner work, and I was confident. In fact, I would have applied for that position if it was one to be applied for, but that was awesome. So the last thing I want to share about this is on finding purpose and meaning, because that is so important to me. Remember the 6 basic human needs. For me, finding purpose, finding meaning has been so significant for me. And that, my basic human need, my number one is significant. It's the significance, finding meaning, being valued, being seen, being heard. And so when I started to branch out into the area of technology, and I began to pursue my purpose, remember my story about the pastor and the coach, and I began to find the area where I was called to and found meaning. So I figured out my purpose is to actually shift mindsets, and transform mindsets, whether it is in the area of technology, whether it's in the area of mental health, whether it's in the area of women in tech or women in general. My purpose is to actually shift people's mindsets, to transform their mindsets, to show them that, hey, this is where you're encountering limiting mindsets, and what can you do to help you overcome those limiting mindsets. And we all face them in all areas of our lives. But how can we actually shift them? So that's the area of purpose. That's where I want to impact. And if you know about narcissistic abuse, or if you have been a victim of any other kind of abuse, emotional abuse specifically, is that with that kind of abuse, someone has almost taken control of your decisions. And so the relationships that I would pursue were relationships where they made the decisions, because I was not confident enough to make a decision. Because remember, after abuse, you're not so confident in yourself. And so there would be areas of someone else doing the decision. And you'll know that narcissists are people who are controlling, so they can easily actually dominate and make the decisions for you and control your life and manipulate if they can't control, or intimidate you and all that. And so it's almost as if they take control of your mind. And so for me, what happened is that the area of my test, which was around mental health, now became the area of my purpose, in terms of where I was affected in terms of my mind. People are controlling your mind, became my area of, now I want to show people how to be set free of these limiting mindsets, how you can reprogram your mind to shift your mindset to know that you can actually thrive. And it's interesting that when I recovered from this, I became more creative and innovative. And I found, when I found myself in the tech space, it's a space of creativity and innovation. And suddenly I could see my creativity coming alive. I could actually pinpoint and see, wow, where I was previously scared of making decisions, not confident in myself. Now I'm even going out and making innovative decisions, innovations, creating products and services that are innovative, and I can actually see the transformation. And one of the other areas is, as I see it in other people, I try also to show them, hey, look, this is my story. This is what happened. Can you draw life lessons from this? How can I help you, and all that. So that's my area of purpose. And one thing I didn't mention was finding God was another big part of my purpose. Because as I was saying earlier, I wanted God to be the one to show me the reason why he created me and put me on this earth. And so finding my journey was around getting salvation. If you're a Christian, you understand what that means. Getting born again, and then pursuing spiritual growth. I remember the very first course I did was Purpose and Leadership. It was a Christian course around finding your purpose and leadership. And that was the beginning. And then after that, I got born again. And my spiritual growth has just been, growing and growing and finding that place where I was called to be. And that gives you meaning, that gives you that fulfillment. The fulfillment that I was always looking for, that after every 2 years, I would be, up and about. Now I found my purpose. I found the area where I'm called to actually be. But when you look at the area that I am in, which is women in tech, which is what I'm really focusing on today, you find that the challenges that I have experienced are similar to what women experience in the workplace. As women in tech, as women in the workplace, it's all about the mindset issue. Again, society has brought us to believe that, yes, society, it's a patriarchal society. And so a lot of times we as women, the stereotypes around, even when you have kids and you have a boy and a girl, the boys are playing with the gadgets, the women are playing with dolls. So it's almost as if, from the time that you're a very young child, it's been positioned that tech is male dominated, tech is for the guys, and women, the other roles for you. But we bring our strengths as women. I know sometimes we compete or we try to be like the men, but we bring our own strengths as women. But when you look at the statistics of women in tech, they're very, very low. When you look at European companies, this is a report by McKinsey, women in all tech roles across European companies are only 22%. So 78% are men. When you look at the US workforce, that number is at 25%. When you look at Africa, this is a report by Patek, which shows the equity funding to female-founded tech startups in Africa. That number is at 17%. So we have such a long way before we get to parity, before we get to 50-50. And the only way we can change is if we, as women, invest in our own mindset transformation, but also the organizations that we work for, how can they help women to also transform, to shift their mindsets around all these areas so that their creativity can come out, their innovation can come forth, and they can be the best that they can be. I remember someone saying to me, imagine watching a movie and the entire cast is male, how would that be? We always need the flavor of the women. We need women in society. We need the women to bring out their strengths, their nurturing selves. I remember one time I was having a conversation with a tech CEO, and he said he wants a women in tech agenda for his organization, but he feels like there's no woman that can lead or is putting up their hand or even wants to. Even when he has a conversation, they almost say no to driving this agenda. I guess maybe because it's time consuming, or maybe because they don't see themselves there, or whatever reason that they have for not leading that initiative. And so as women, we sometimes shy away from opportunities, but they're needed. And I remember the conversation. He was saying there are too many men in the organization, and there's no pipeline even in the industry, in his own industry, and they need more women, because what happens is that when they're all men, then there's something that women bring. They bring meticulousness. They bring in all these good things, nurturing and all that, emotional intelligence, the things that we are strong at. And so if women are not there, these things are lacking. And so it's not a matter of giving women a quota and saying, diversity and inclusion says we should have this, and that's fairly good enough. But it needs to come from a point of women actually taking on the lead, are confident to actually lead, and their qualities, their strengths are actually valued and appreciated. And so some of the reasons why you'll find barriers, or the barriers that cause this underrepresentation of women in tech, and I guess women in general, I looked at them as external barriers, but also internal barriers. So we know of unconscious biases, and I've talked about them, even and gender stereotypes, that even as from the time that we are growing up, even as you go into the workforce, the boys playing with gadgets and the girls playing with dolls, and across even as you enter the workforce, and you find these areas like tech are male dominated, and it just continues to perpetuate the issue of and the gender gap. So if women find that, then you'll continue to find underrepresentation of women in tech. Lack of mentors and role models. We need more mentors who are intentional about actually mentoring the next generation of women in tech or girls in STEM. We need more role models that they can see, because a lot of times if all they see is male-dominated industry, then they will not be able to relate. So we need women to come out as role models, but we also need the men as allies. I think that cannot be overemphasized. We can't do this as women alone. The men need to come in as allies and help us in terms of bridging that gap. You find women facing unequal pays, inflexible work cultures, unequal access to opportunities. These are real barriers that women face that are external to them, that they cannot do anything about. So it's not even about their mindset, it's about the external environment, and that they can really do nothing about until the world changes. But when you look at the internal barriers, now this is internal to the women. This is you and I, the work that you and I can do internally to position ourselves as women in tech. And when I talk about women in tech, it's not just those women who are in tech jobs, like myself, for example. But you think about that woman who is in a HR role, for example, and is championing artificial intelligence. So the organization may not be a tech company, could be any organization, but she's championing something in HR, use of artificial intelligence and stuff. So the place where we are in right now, the world is in a digital era. And so we have to be tech savvy, all of us, whichever industry. Every industry is being disrupted, whether it is financial services, manufacturing, agriculture, whichever sector is being disrupted. So we have to get the skills that will enable us to be better or to thrive in this technological era. So when you find the internal mindsets, the mindsets that women struggle with, and the ones that I shared about that I used to struggle with before I came, I'm not tech savvy enough. It's too late for me to start, or I'm too old to pivot into tech. Feelings of I don't belong here, feelings of my contributions might not be valued. So I will not even put up my hand to speak if I'm in a corporate organization. You know, I have to choose between career and family. I have to be perfect. This is a serious one for women. Women feel they need to be perfect before they apply for a role. They have to be perfect before they pitch for this, and, I'm not cut out for tech leadership. All these are limiting mindsets that women need to deal with so that they can actually thrive. Because all these mindsets, remember your mindset. If your mindset says, I'm not tech savvy enough, it affects your emotions. So when you check into a room, you feel emotions of inadequacy, of inferiority, and that affects your decisions. What decisions will you make? Next time, I'll not show up for this meeting. Or if I show up, I won't speak because I'm not tech savvy enough. Or I'll not take up this opportunity because I'm not tech savvy enough. So it affects the decisions that we make as women in tech. And the significance of women in tech and the value that women bring is not just to tick the gap and say we have parity or gender parity and all that. Women bring substantial things and strengths to the table. We bring our unique perspectives. We bring, when you actually thrive as a woman, it inspires other people to thrive, and that brings economic prosperity for us all. Because if women are not thriving in our economies, then of course there will be problems. So as women in tech, when we show up, we dismantle the stereotypes that have been there, the gender stereotypes. Then we know that we'll have inclusive products because we're selling the world is selling products and services that are for everybody, male, female, but when you have only the men in tech dominating in that area, then the products and services will not have the voice of the women who are significant buyers of these products and services. Market competitiveness. You'll find, I think it was a McKinsey report that said, when you include something about women, the profits and the performance is much higher. I think it's about 50% or something. And there's also the regulatory compliance where, increasingly people are seeing the need for including women and including women in tech. So there are policies and regulations around that are coming up. And as I close, what strategies can we have to inspire inclusion, and we can look at internal strategies and external strategies. So internal is what I talked about, the different mindsets that we can explore to actually change and reprogram our minds. For me, I said God-centered mindset because that's where I found my purpose and I found meaning for what I was doing and what I needed to do. And I get a lot of people asking me, how did you pivot and know? I guess maybe they look at the accolades and the awards and and they say, how did you know how to pivot into tech with such precision? That I didn't go into another sector or something else and, succeed. That I went into tech and it just, hit the nail on the head. For me, it boils down to God-centeredness because I went to God to actually reveal to me what is this, what I was called to do. And I think when you approach it like that, well, for me, because I'm a strong believer in God, then I find, then I hit the nail on the head. I don't have to struggle around what should I be doing. Knowledge, pursue knowledge. Always knowledge will give you an edge as a woman. Where you're feeling not as confident, are you knowledgeable? And these things apply to not just women, by the way, even the men. How do we inspire inclusion? How do we change our mindsets? Acquire knowledge, become creative and innovative, as you deal with the mental health challenges. Pursuing techfluence or influential technology influence, becoming thought leaders in whichever area that you are. Having a women in tech mindset. This one is not just for the women, but also for the men as allies. That you're constantly thinking about women and how to advance women so that you have both skills of men and women. Personal growth mindset, I talked about it. Always look at how, how is your mind being affected, your emotions, your decisions, what needs are you pursuing, your 6 basic human needs, grow as a person. And then the impact mindset. I think when we were in school, we all thought we must have looked at Pastel as a framework, as a framework to, it was a framework to do what? To look at the environment and how, the environment is affecting an organization, for example, all right? Looking at the politically, environmentally, socially, technological, economic, and legal, yeah? So when you think about the same framework and use it for your own impact as a human being, where are you impacting other people? Where are you contributing towards other people? Is it in technology? Is it socially? Is it economically? Is it in the area of policy and regulation and all that? Some external strategies that we could have that I've seen organizations use to actually empower their women in tech, so that you bring up the women in tech so that they can also thrive. And women in general, is educating the workforce, whether they are male or female, education on bias training, education on technology, education in whatever it is that where you need change, whether it is also mindsets and all that. Mentorship, coaching, and role modeling, pursuing that. Policies and regulation that advance women and advance women in tech. Diversity and inclusion initiatives, that look at recruitment. What are your recruitment policies? Are you favoring men as opposed to women? Do you have enough? How does your workforce look like? What training are you giving to them? What leadership opportunities are you giving to the women, to set that gender balance? And then also awards and recognition. And I know Colleen is here. A big thank you to you, because you really mastered this gender mainstreaming initiative, awarding and recognizing women who are making impact in whichever areas that they have. That goes a long way as a strategy to actually inspire inclusion. Because when these people see their awards or they're recognized, they actually feel motivation to keep going and also motivate others and pay it forward. STEM outreach programs, where you say at your workplace, maybe the pipeline of women is not, or pipeline of women in tech is not that great. How then can you inspire women? Go back to the grassroots level, to schools. How can you change the narrative around these biases, so that even as the women and as the girls grow, then those biases, are less and less, and that we're nipping it in the bud as the kids are growing. And by the time they get into the workforce, they don't have these biases in their minds. Investment in women-led and women in tech-led initiatives. Back to, I think, one of my first slides, we was talking about, no, one of the few slides, I was talking about like women-founded businesses. I think the investments or the funding to female-founded businesses in Africa was, women-founded tech businesses in Africa was only 17%. So are there initiatives that can be funded? Are there venture capitalists that can look at this area to bring the women and advance them? And also there are many organizations that are giving market access opportunities to women and to women in tech. So again, either doing this as a corporate or partnering with other organizations to do this, these are definitely good strategies. And lastly, mindsets is an issue. Mindsets is a problem for us as women, but also the world in general. Limiting mindsets about emerging technology hold us back from impactful innovation. So we need to deal with those limiting mindsets. If we don't deal with them, then we're not operating at our full level. This is just a little bit about us, about TechAwat and what we do, but I already shared about us, about that earlier in terms of what we do and the courses that we offer. So thank you very much. And I can take questions.
Any questions for Evelyn? Any comments? I don't see any questions. But Evelyn, I mean, I'm looking through the chat, and I'm sure you've seen all the comments in the chat, and everybody is really, they've loved your talk this morning, and some of the comments, very insightful and powerful. Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, very inspiring. Well done for finding God. Wow, this must be so fulfilling. My journey also led me to Women in Tech. Women hold only 23% of tech roles, and it's something that we need to do something about it. But are there any final questions for Evelyn? No? Evelyn, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Really appreciate it. And as the positive role model lead for East Africa, we really appreciate you making time to be with us here this morning. Have an awesome International Women's Day.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me for this session.
No, you're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay, everybody, our next speaker will start in 5 minutes. We've got a break for 5 minutes and we'll see you back.